Every 7 minutes, the silence of a British street is shattered by a new machete attack. In London, the risk of a life-ending confrontation has surged by 22%. Yet the headlines you see are often sanitized to protect a fragile narrative. While the Prime Minister stands at a podium denying the existence of no-go zones, over 9,100 police officers have quietly handed in their badges and walked away. This isn't a routine staffing issue, it is a mass flight of authority from a country that feels like it's in a state of freefall. Tonight, as 361 new unregulated arrivals land on the southern coast, the streets are delivering a verdict that Whitehall refuses to hear. The British social contract hasn't just been breached, it's been liquidated.
To understand the physical discord on our streets, you have to look at the machete paradox. In Starmer's Britain, a woman walking home alone faces arrest and a criminal record if she carries a non-lethal canister of pepper spray for self-defense. The law classifies her survival instinct as a firearm offense. Yet, at the same time, masked gangs carrying 20-inch zombie knives operate with near total impunity. We are witnessing the criminalization of self-preservation. With nearly 51,000 knife offences annually, the state demands total dependency on an emergency response network that is chronically understaffed and minutes or hours away. It is a security cordon around the law-abiding, while the lawless roam free.
Why are the bobbies abandoning the beat? Leaked memos from within local precincts confirm a paralysing directive. Officers are reportedly forbidden from disclosing the cultural or religious background of violent suspects to protect community cohesion. Constables on the front line aren't cowards. They are institutionally gagged. They are ordered to protect the perimeters of migrant hotels with elite suppression units, while 15% of neighbourhoods are described by locals as being under parallel legal systems. This two-tier justice has driven over 9,200 demoralised officers to quit, leaving the remaining force overstretched and commanded by leaders who prioritise political correctness over public safety.
The most stunning nail in this story is the transatlantic contrast. While the UK Treasury burns £8 million a day on three-star hotels and full board for undocumented arrivals, the US has executed the most aggressive border operation in history. Under a renewed enforcement strategy, American authorities successfully deported over 1.4 million individuals in a single year. In London, however, any attempt at similar action is branded as inhumane or a violation of the ECHR. By remaining tethered to a foreign court in Strasbourg, the UK has become the soft touch of the continent, where human rights lawyers use taxpayer money to ground every deportation flight.
We are standing at the edge of an 8-year demographic clock, with arrival rates hitting 1,000 a day and birth rate projections shifting the social fabric. The UK is undergoing a permanent transformation that no one voted for. The English warning is no longer a whisper in Washington. It is a loud, shattering reality in the suburbs of Birmingham and London. The government can monitor your tweets, and they can label your concerns as extremism, but they cannot hide the receipts of a broken border. The curiosity of the viewer shouldn't be about whether the system is failing. The empty police lockers and the 7-minute machete clock have already answered that. The question is, when the new normal finally takes everything, who will be left to call for help? The silence from the palace is deafening. The standoff has begun.
$107 107 police officers injured, homes smashed open, cars burned in residential streets, a leisure centre reduced to a mangled, smoking skeleton, migrant families fleeing their neighbourhoods in the dead of night. These are not images from faraway conflicts. These are scenes from towns across Ireland and the UK, where anti-immigration unrest has erupted with a scale and ferocity few anticipated. The damage is staggering, not only because of its size, but because of what it signals: a breakdown of trust, an atmosphere thick with fear, and a public mood turning sharper by the hour. And the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes that these events are not isolated sparks. They are flare-ups of the same pressure building across two nations, pressure that no government has yet managed to release. In Ballymena, tension burst without warning. Streets that had been quiet days earlier were suddenly filled with the crackling roar of fireworks being fired horizontally into police shields. Bricks and bottles followed. Officers pushed forward, fell back, regrouped, and were struck again. For 3 consecutive nights, the clashes grew more severe, the explosions brighter, the crowd more determined. When daylight returned, the cost was brutally evident. Dozens of officers were hurt, families found their windows smashed, and cars stood gutted on driveways. Migrant communities pasted makeshift notices to their doors, insisting their houses were British households, hoping it might be enough to stop someone from shattering the next pane of glass. But fear spread faster than reassurance could. Entire streets saw families of Romanian, Bulgarian, and Filipino origin packing their belongings into their cars, leaving the homes they had lived in for years. In one neighbourhood, nearly 2/3 of a Roma community left altogether, too frightened to stay another night. The violence then struck Larne. A leisure centre temporarily housing displaced migrants was forced open by masked men and set alight. Flames tore through the roof. Fire crews battled to contain the blaze, as police confirmed it was a deliberate attack. Officers brought in reinforcement units, including water cannons, to regain control of the surrounding streets. The sense of instability did not fade with the smoke. It settled in, heavy and unmistakable, a belief that something fundamental had shifted.
Dublin, throwing bottles and launching fireworks at authorities during an anti-immigration protest sparked by allegations of an attack on a young girl.
Across Ireland, anger was erupting in multiple places at once. These clashes were not spreading from town to town like contagion. They were surfacing independently, each driven by its own mixture of frustration, fear, and political disillusionment. And in Dublin, the tension snapped into full view. More than 1,000 protesters surged through southwest Dublin after news broke that an asylum seeker had been charged with the alleged assault of a 10-year-old girl. The crowd pushed forward with a force that overwhelmed officers. A Garda vehicle was set ablaze. A helicopter circling overhead was hit repeatedly by laser beams. Officers were struck by fireworks fired like munitions. Inside the hotel housing asylum seekers, families pressed themselves against interior walls as the sounds of glass, explosions, and shouting filled the air. But what's most alarming is not just the violence itself, but the pattern it fits into. Across the UK the previous year, more than 30 towns had already faced their own anti-immigration demonstrations, some spiralling into nights of open disorder. Hotels became flashpoints, streets filled with confrontations. Councils spent millions trying to stabilise communities, often with only partial success. Put together, these events reveal a continent-wide unease, where social tension no longer waits for a single trigger. It erupts wherever the pressure is highest. Inside Downing Street, these scenes have landed with the weight of a political crisis. Keir Starmer, already under pressure to bring immigration under firmer control, now faces a reality where unrest is unfolding faster than policy. His Home Secretary has pushed to accelerate deportations, tighten asylum rules, and reduce visa pathways for workers and families, arguing that public confidence can only be rebuilt through decisive action. Yet these measures have not calmed the streets. Instead, the government finds itself caught between two forces moving simultaneously. One side accuses Starmer of being too slow, too cautious, too unwilling to confront what they see as a national emergency. The other argues the government is abandoning humanitarian responsibilities and fueling fear with rhetoric that emboldens extremists. This divide has created a political grey zone, one where neither side feels listened to, and both feel increasingly angry. Online networks magnify that anger relentlessly. Videos of clashes in Ballymena, fires in Larne, and confrontations in Dublin are being clipped, shared, distorted, and weaponised. Narratives form instantly. Some are false, others exaggerated, but all of them spread faster than official statements can correct. And as those narratives grow, they build a sense that the authorities are no longer in control. For Starmer, this is the nightmare scenario. A security challenge that morphs into a political one, then feeds back into the streets, creating a cycle neither legislation nor press conferences can easily break. Across both islands, police forces are reviewing their plans, strengthening patrols, and preparing for more unrest. Community leaders are meeting behind closed doors, trying to calm residents who are terrified of further reprisals. Councils are assessing damage to homes, shops, and public buildings, unsure how they will fund the repairs. Migrant families continue to leave neighbourhoods where they believed they were safe. In every conversation, from police stations to Parliament, the same fear echoes: the next eruption may not wait for weeks or months. It could happen tomorrow, triggered by a rumour, an allegation, a video, even a misunderstanding. And when you consider the scale of the destruction already seen, burned buildings, displaced families, entire communities emptied, and more than 100 officers injured, the stakes become painfully clear. If this is what a single wave of anger looks like, what happens when the next one hits? And will the UK or Ireland be ready when it does?
On an already febrile situation, now more fuel on the fire. At one of Belfast's peace lines last night, the peace was broken.
There is a specific sound a military makes when it breaks, not the roar of cannons, but the quiet click of 15,000 soldiers turning in their kits for the last time. This isn't a routine retirement. It is a massive vote of no confidence that has left the British Army at its smallest size in over 300 years. While the government in Whitehall scrambles to manage the optics, the truth is bleeding out of the barracks. Our brave defenders are walking away, not because they fear the battlefield, but because they feel institutionally betrayed. As military bases like Scampton and Wethersfield are transformed into high-capacity accommodation centres for unregulated arrivals, the men and women who swore to protect these borders are asking a painful question: who exactly are we defending? To understand the gravity of this security collapse, you have to look at the numbers. Since the current administration took office, trust within the military has reportedly plummeted by 66%. We are seeing a systemic abandonment of the traditional soldier in favour of a new politically managed demographic strategy. While Donald Trump warns that the UK is gambling with its defence and handing away strategic assets like the Chagos Islands, the British military is shrinking to a point where analysts suggest we wouldn't last 13 days in a major conflict. This isn't just a budget issue, it's a fiscal responsibility paradox. We are spending £8 million every single day on hotel capacity for undocumented arrivals, while our own warships are being towed to the scrapyard because we simply don't have the sailors to man them. The most noticeable news isn't just the walkout, it's the treatment gap. We are witnessing a sovereign insult that has turned the streets into a theatre of heightened civil unrest. On one side, you have veterans who patrolled deserts and stormed beaches, now left to rot in mould-infested council flats or facing retrospective prosecution for actions taken 50 years ago. On the other, you have unregulated arrivals who have bypassed every legal check, immediately bussed to 3-star hotels with full board and legal aid funded by the very taxpayers they've displaced. Critics like Nigel Farage are now openly labelling this as demographic gerrymandering, a cold, calculated strategy to replace a disillusioned electorate with a new dependent population. Why is the Prime Minister paralysed? The opposition warns that Britain is no longer a sovereign nation, but a vassal state of international bureaucracy. By remaining tethered to the European Court of Human Rights, the government has created a legal framework where foreign judges decide who walks the streets of Leeds and London. This legal straitjacket is the reason deportation flights are grounded, while military barracks are requisitioned. The administration would rather bankrupt the Treasury and demoralise the army than offend the progressive lobby. It is a silent coup disguised as asylum policy, and the personnel draining from the barracks tonight are the ultimate proof that the covenant of service is being liquidated.
The soldiers walking away tonight aren't just quitting a job, they are exiting a system that they believe has stopped loving them back. The government can monitor the situation, they can label the dissent as far right, and they can talk about modernisation, but they cannot fight a war with an empty uniform.
The curiosity of the viewer shouldn't be about why the ranks are thinning. The reasons are written on every hotel receipt and every veteran's court summons. The internal surrender of Britain is no longer a warning, it is a headline. The invisible eye of the public is open. The question is, who will be left to answer the call when the new normal finally breaks the nation? The last orders for the British military have been called.